Hey guys, BIX WEIR from roota on the line. Couldn't be happier to have you back, BIX. Welcome back.
Thanks, Sean. It's good to be back. How are you?
I'm
Sounds
hanging.
like you're getting attacked left and right.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of months, and what are you going to do? Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as they say, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I remember the early days of doing this back 10 years ago when I was jumping up and down about gold and silver manipulation, and I was getting attacked left and right from all angles. So I know where you're coming from.
Well, I appreciate that, and I want to thank everybody who's taken the time to leave me a kind comment of support and, give me a thumbs up because, it's just real clear. I mean, you and I are talking about the bad guys. That's what we like to do. That's what you should do if you embrace liberty. And I'm just really happy to see hundreds and hundreds and, essentially thousands of people standing, shoulder to shoulder with guys like you and me, Bix, guys like James Turk, guys like Jim Sinclair. I mean, all of us are in the weeds here together. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time because, we all need to stand together and stand up for each other, don't we, Bix?
We do, and you're doing something right if they start coming after you. So congratulations. I remember Bill Murphy in the early days. In 1 month, he got knocked out with some brass knuckles. He got his website hacked, and he got his car stolen. So, from your side, you're doing okay.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the world, Bix. The quickening is at hand. I just can't believe how rapidly things are changing. We have the Swiss devaluing the franc, which was an absolutely epic event happening back there in early September when they pegged the franc to the euro at 120. The Swiss are reacting to that news. The Swiss People's Party has launched a referendum to protect the 1,000 tons of gold owned by the Swiss National Bank, and their aim is to make it unconstitutional to sell gold and force the SNB to hold 20% of its assets in gold. Currently, only 16% of their assets are in gold. This is an epic event that's really starting to affect the whole world, isn't it, Bix? As people are awakening to the fact that these central banks will stop at nothing to devalue fiat currencies.
We are at the end game when it comes to this the whole plan of fiat money, and this was in the United States. If you read the Gold Commission, the big report that was done in 1981 and released in 1982, the conclusion, they got all the smartest people in the United States and around the world together to analyze whether or not we should go back onto a gold standard. And Reagan was pushing for this. And the conclusion of that report, they said, well, we're not going to do anything right now. But in the future, if we don't get the budgets under control, we figure that the people in the gold community will be getting larger and louder enough and loud enough to kind of force a return to a gold standard. And if you look at what's happened since 1981, all we do is print money. That is exactly what the United States wants to do, print as much money as possible to implode the dollar and return to a gold standard. And the really interesting thing these days, 1 month ago, in early August, there was fright in the market about the debt ceiling. We were up in arms about, oh my God, what if the U.S. defaults? And what happens a month and a half later? Obama comes out and says, we need another $500 billion to get jobs started. What happened to that big argument about the debt ceiling that was only 6 weeks ago?
It's a great point, Bix. One of the things I want to talk about with you, Bix, is that you point out that the price of both gold and silver is 100% rigged every day, and you write that the powers that be can place the price of these metals at $1 million an ounce or $0 an ounce with the stroke of a computer key. And if you want to survive the coming chaos, you must put yourself in a position where price does not matter. Explain that for folks, will you?
Well, the only way to run an unbacked fiat currency is to control the price of gold and silver. And that has been the motto of the United States and those controlling gold and silver since the early 70s when we went off the gold standard. And it makes sense because no unbacked currency has ever lasted this long. This is the longest it's been, about 40 years since we've been on a truly unbacked fiat monetary system. This is the first time in history it's lasted so long. There's been 3,000 other unbacked currencies that have tried and failed, and over again, the ultimate cause of the failure is printing too much of that money. When you can't control the amount of money that's printed, if it's not under control, you're going to print as much as you can until you destroy the currency. It's human nature. So to control the price of gold and silver is a must. And it was Alan Greenspan who invented the computer programs back in the 60s, and 70s that rigged the market. And today it's done through the large banks, and obviously they've taken over kind of that role and have used it for their own benefit. But that is, one day they're going to turn off that computer program. One day, very soon, they're going to turn off that computer program. Gold and silver are going to go wild. But until that day happens, you have to protect yourself. You can't have money in an ETF or in some kind of paper form of gold and silver. You have to have physical, and it's got to be on your own possession.
Okay, and let's talk about that, because you also make the note that the gold and silver ETFs were a con job from day one, and maybe the bad guy's last card in the destruction of the price of the precious metals. You write that at any moment, both of these ETFs can be dissolved for a myriad of reasons, giving the bad guys the perfect cover to go for one final all-out computer-rigged metal slam. So your point is that folks would be emotionally devastated with a crash of silver down to $5. Now we're talking about paper silver and paper gold down to $300. Then people aren't thinking about their investments properly, because if you have your metal in physical outside of the system, that's a whole different mindset, isn't it?
That's really the only way to survive what's coming. Now, what's coming is the release of gold and silver from the manipulation. Gold and silver will go skyward, the value of them, the purchasing power. But to get there, this is a gigantic deal, because the release of gold and silver from manipulation will destroy all unbacked fiat currencies. So the people who are vested in the unbacked fiat currency is almost every single person in the world, because they have checking accounts, they have savings accounts, the banks and the governments who get to print all the money. It is a very big deal, and it's kind of why the CFTC is not clamping down on these guys yet, is because they know the consequences of a world without gold and silver manipulation. It means unbacked currency will fail almost immediately.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Webster Tarpley has even made the point that if this system collapses, then we better have a backup system in place, because it's going to get dicey, it's going to get ugly. But at the end of the day, I think anybody that's woken up to what's happening here, we all realize that this system needs to crash. It's a corrupt system. It's going to crash. So you need to get prepared. And whether or not there's a backup system in place, as James Rickards has suggested, eventually the world will return to a gold standard. To your point, things will work out at some point, but we have to go through a lot of pain first. Let's talk about, well, first of all, your reaction to any of that?
The interesting thing is, yes, we have to go through a lot of pain. A crash in an unbacked fiat system, in any monetary system, is painful. But the problem is not that the system has to go through this change. The problem is that the system is faulty to begin with. When you build a currency on debt, you have to continue to expand that currency just to pay the interest on the debt. So right now, our biggest problem is not the collapse of the banks and the return to a gold standard. Our biggest problem right now is debt. Every single person in the world, every country, every state and local government is massively in debt to the tune of trillions and trillions upon trillions of dollars. And it is the kind of debt that you can't get out of. The only way to sustain the system is to keep printing. And you're going to keep printing. You're going to see it out of the Fed. You're going to see it out of Washington until the entire system collapses. Because when it does collapse, all of a sudden, there is no more debt. There is no more electronic and paper debt. It's a complete wash. And when you think about it on a nation basis, who is the largest nation debtor in the world? It's the United States. By far, we have more debt than any country in the world. So who wins when all debt is erased? The United States. We keep all our hard assets that we bought, and we paved roads and we built houses. We keep those hard assets, but all the debt is erased because the unbacked currency is erased. Does that kind of make sense? Because it's not a bad thing. It's a required thing so that we can move forward.
Yeah, it's a cleansing of the system, and I think that where we'd all agree, those of us who are awake to what's happening here, is that it would immediately put an end to these unconstitutional wars for which there would no longer be funding. There's a lot of rosy scenarios for humanity and for liberty in the event of a dollar collapse, although I don't wish it on the working poor. I don't wish it on people in poverty. I don't wish it on the middle class. I don't wish it on anybody who's unprepared. But at the end of the day, hopefully it will reset us back towards liberty and away from a new world order. That's when people are going to have to stand up. That's when people are going to, the educated among us are going to have to stand up and inform our brothers and sisters, say, look, this might be a crisis that was caused by them on purpose. Here's what they want to do to fix it. They want to roll us into one world currency, into one world government, into whatever their bogus solutions are. No, the answer is liberty. Here's what we need to do. Ron Paul's got the answers. The Constitution has the answers. Let's look to our founding fathers to know what to do.
I think you're exactly right, and over the past couple of years, that's what's been kind of started to be ingrained in the U.S. in the common people. Just imagine what's going to happen with the next banking collapse, which I think has already started. It should really kick into high gear in October when they start releasing the third quarter results. And for some businesses and governments, that's the end of the year results. Then the crisis is really going to hit home. We're in that red zone, the hot zone that the next collapse is upon us. And when it happens, there's been enough media coverage, movies, that movie Too Big to Fail, and all this coverage that today the people are much more educated and ready to stand up and when these banks collapse to basically kick out the bad guys. We're ready to do it. We're just waiting for that spark where we get pissed off because our bank account is gone or our 401k is gone.
Right, and ultimately that is what it's going to take for some people to wake up. People that are still sound asleep, they're going to need that 401k to go to zero or be devalued 75% overnight before they get it. Now, before we let you go, Bix, let's just talk a little bit about this idea of keeping your metal outside of the financial system. You write, no ETFs, no metal certificates, no mining stocks, no safe deposit boxes. And full disclosure, Bix, I still own some mining stocks, some of which I've done very well on, others of which I'm getting beat up on. And I do take everything that you're saying to heart, and I know there's a lot of people out there that would agree with you about the mining stocks.
The thing about mining stocks, and I used to be a huge investor in mining stocks, I understand that they are leveraged multiples of the price of metal. They're cheap beyond belief right now. Here's the deal with the mining stocks that I believe, why I don't tell people to invest in them, is because they are too valuable. They hold the wealth of the future of that nation in which the mine is in. So when this collapse happens and the world turns to a gold and silver standard, which it always does, those mining stocks, there's no doubt in my mind that every single mine around the world will be nationalized because 99.9% of the population will lose everything. And that 0.1% of the population that owns mining stocks will be the richest people in the world. People aren't going to stand for that. I understand the desire to own mining stocks, and it is huge because they're massively undervalued. The wealth in the ground that they have is uncalculable. But that is the problem. It's not that they're not valuable. It's that they're way too valuable. What they have in the ground is the future currency of the world.
Understood. Okay, thanks for articulating that. That's a great point. Let's circle back, though, a little bit, and let's talk about this idea of keeping your metals outside of the financial system. Because as you noted, and as we talked about here early in the interview, they can, with the flip of a switch, essentially using all their paper, all their bogus paper, crash these prices down really as low as they want to by flooding the world with paper, right? We think that they can still do that despite the page and these other markets opening up across the globe. Let's just say that they can and may do that.
And not only that, but they are right now. The prices of gold and silver are massively depressed. Today, they should be 50 times what they are right now.
Don't miss part 2. Click here.
Okay, now I want to bridge back just a little bit to your road to roota theory, because for those of us who have been listening to you and have read your road to roota theory, you've got a lot of great information in there, and we want to believe it. We want to believe that there are some knights in shining armor that are trying to do the right thing, and it was their goal, according to you, to bankrupt the bankers by allowing them to hang themselves. And now that we see that happening, we see a lot of other good things happening, like Ron Paul coming to the forefront. Here's my question. We see so many tyrannical things happening. The reality is we're seeing so much bad stuff perpetrated by the bad guys, not the least of which is this new NDAA bill, S-1867, which is going to allow the military to treat the United States, quote-unquote, homeland, a term I hate, as a battlefield and treat the American people as the enemy. It's just beyond the pale. Now, what's your take on all this tyrannical legislation?
I know it's very frightening to people, and it is completely unconstitutional, against our laws, against our liberty. But when things like this happen, you need to remember that everything will change when there's the next banking crash. It's not all that far from where we've been for the last 20 years. We've strayed away from the legal system. We've strayed away from the Constitution. We've gone to war in all these countries without declaring it, because it sets up what a lot of people feel is coming down the pike by the bad guys. The turning into a military state, taking away all our freedoms, things like that. And that was the plan all along by the bad guys. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to take over America and destroy our country and take over the world, create a one world government, things like that. And that's all that stuff, along with what's going on at MF Global, how they're completely disregarding bankruptcy law, and all that stuff will go away if the good guys win. And there's something called nullification, that states can nullify federal laws, and all that will come into play when we have a large banking crash. And it's up to we, the people, to stand up and say, we're going to turn to Ron Paul, and we're not going to turn to Newt Gingrich or Mitt Romney and all these bad guys that are now in office. It's going to take the people of the United States to stand up when this happens, which I'm absolutely positive it'll happen sometime next year, and to stand up and say, okay, we are done with the way you want our lives to be. We're going to stand up for the Constitution. We're going to turn to Ron Paul, and it's time. You can see it. You can sense it in the air that the world is waking up, especially because Ron Paul, of what he talks about, and people are saying, well, yeah, it's all well and good, but how will that affect us today? If we turn to a banking crash and these bankers go down again, much like it started in 2008, they barely got saved, but it was just, they gave them a couple more years. If we turn to the banking crash, if it happens in the first half of the year, you're going to see the people of the United States will be given a choice. Do we turn to Ron Paul, or do we turn into Obama's military state? And there will be a choice, and I believe we will stand up and say, that's it. All these laws that are unconstitutional, all these laws that limit our freedoms, get rid of them. We don't need them. We don't want them. We're going to go back to our Constitution.
Well, very good, Bix. I think that, to kick off 2012 or to end 2011 with a conversation with you is really on point, because it's nice to hear some good news. And we all want to get on board with the good news. And the good news is that you think the good guys are going to take this thing back, and we sure hope you're right. Why don't you leave us with your thoughts again on silver? Not to be silver cheerleaders, but for anybody paying attention who has seen that first Majestic video on how difficult it is to mine silver and refine it. Anybody that owns physical silver has to appreciate what they've got more when they realize how incredibly difficult it is to find the stuff, pull it out of the ground, and refine it. What's your position on $27 or $25 or $20 silver? Aren't the bad guys breaking their own backs by bringing the prices down this low?
I think they are, because it draws more attention to it. But it's one of those things. Silver isn't $25 or $50 or $100 or $1,000. Nobody knows what the true fair market value of silver is. It's rigged every day, and it has been since the early 70s. So, you get more back to, okay, I have some investment money. Where do I want to put it? One, we can see from the MF Global debacle that you don't want anybody between you and your investment money. No brokerage account, no. You see, it kind of gets into my feeling on mining companies. Although they're going to own some very valuable metal in the ground, there's all these other layers that you need to understand, that like the DTCC, which controls all the certificates supposedly, is the biggest fraud known to man. And it hasn't come out yet, but it will, that the float of these companies, say they have 50 million shares out there. Well, 50 million shares of these companies trade in a week. So you start to wonder, well, are these real trades? These high-frequency traders stick their computers right next to the exchange so they can skim off the top. It's a gigantic Ponzi scheme that when the music stops, as we found at MF Global, when the music stops, there's a bunch of missing money. There's a bunch of missing certificates. So to be safe, and more than just being safe, to make a sound investment, an investment that will really go off the charts, you got to own your physical metal in your own possession. And if you're looking for that, the leverage that a mining company gives you, just think of the amount of leverage owning physical silver will give you if the whole thing falls apart and there's all these third-party defaults and things like that. Everybody and their mother is going to be chasing after physical silver in their own possession. So, in gold as well, but there's a lot more gold out there than people are saying. There's hidden gold mines in the Grand Canyon. There's hidden gold mines at Chocolate Mountain down in California, and this is all part of the plan for the United States to go back on a gold and silver standard. So, if you're now, I tend to stray these days because silver can be so all-consuming in your mind when you start investing in it. I'm only talking about investment dollars, and you should use other money and other wealth that you have to secure your house, the place you live, the food that you have stored up, your protection, your supplies, things like that. That's most important. Secondary is investment dollars, and those, yes, I believe physical silver in your own possession will be one of the few things that save you in this coming meltdown.
Well, Bix, before we let you go, do you want to just, for new listeners, do a brief, I don't even know if it's fair to ask you to do a brief recap of your road to roota theory. It's so broad and there's so much great research there. But for those to whom this information is new, why don't you tell us briefly what the road to roota theory is and how people can read your detailed articles about it? Where do they find those on your website?
Sure. And it used to be very difficult to explain, but the more it got proven to be valid and true, the easier it is. Back in the 1960s and early 70s, the U.S. was having trouble with their pseudo-gold standard. And what was decided by Nixon, because the French were pulling all their gold out of the U.S., trading their dollars in, we decided to close the gold window that's basically the time we went off the gold standard. And at that time, there were certain economists who had written technical papers on the best way to return to a gold standard, and one of those was called On the Road to the Golden Age. And that was a theory that if you're going to go from an unbacked currency to a backed currency, backed with gold, before you do that, you run the currency system as long and hard as you can. And that's what we've been doing since the 1970s. And Alan Greenspan and this guy named John Kimeny and this guy Stephen Duveau were in charge of putting computer programs in place in the early 70s to control the markets, rig the markets so that people don't get too excited about gold and silver, because those are really the only alternatives to an unpacked paper system. So this has been going on since the early 70s, and we're at that point now when it was kind of taken over by other people who had computer programs and the banking cabal and things like that. But we're at that point now where it's time to turn off the computers, return to a gold standard, and completely wipe out all these paper and electronic fiat unbacked monetary instruments. And you really do have to wipe everything out to start fresh, because right now every single person, every state and local government, everybody on earth except for a very, very few, upper elite, are massively in debt. So that's where we are now. 2012 most likely will be that turning point where they turn off the computer programs, they wipe out all the malinvestment and the bad debt and bad monetary instruments, and we get to return to a gold and silver standard. And I proved this through all these documents released by the Federal Reserve Boston, and you can see it in the new $100 bill. I have a great article about that where they show gold and overthrowing your government right on the bill. So all these things are coming true, and it'll be a little scary, but once you understand what's going on, you'll understand how we can get through this and return to a more sound system of governance, a more sound monetary system, and going forward, how the future can be very bright for the world, especially in the United States.
And Bix, being that 2012 is right on top of us, I'm going to throw you a curveball because I think I'd be remiss not to ask you about the Mayan calendar and what you think December 21st, 2012 holds. For those who have asked me, I've always said that I think December 22nd is going to look a lot like December 20th. We all may just be a lot poorer, who knows. But what do you see coming with the Mayan calendar and the end of the age? Is it just a new awakening? Because I'm seeing a lot of people waking up. I'm seeing humanity wake up, which is darn good news.
You know, this is getting a little off topic, but you know, I love the conspiracy stuff, so I'll tell you my take on it. I do believe it's a new age and a new understanding, and a lot of that is not necessarily on that specific date, but will transpire, especially monetarily, during this year. We're going to see mass chaos, and we're going to see a return to a more sound monetary system, and a lot of that, I believe, is in preparation for what's coming down in December at the end of the year. And for me, it transcends the economics and it transcends the social issues. It's more of a physical planetary situation, and I've learned a lot from Cliff High at halfpasthuman.com and the whole planetary expansion theory versus plate tectonics. It will be much more of an earth changes type event. It won't be the end of the world at all, but I think the end of the monetary world and our system of governments is coming much sooner than that. I'm looking at March it begins and then goes for 6 months, and then we kind of get to the other side before all these earth changes happen at the end of the year. So that's my crazy take on it. But remember, you asked.
Well, thanks for that, Bix. I think people will find that intriguing, and all we can do is use conjecture. Nobody knows what's coming, but we know what's coming in terms of the monetary system, and it's not going to get better. In fact, Obama wants to raise the debt ceiling once again, and there's just no end in sight. They're going to continue to print fiat, and they're going to try to fill this hole with fiat cash, and that's why you and I and others say take your fiat cash and turn it into something tangible like physical precious metals. So, Bix, thanks so much. We really appreciate your time. Tell people how to find some of your free work on the internet or how to subscribe to your newsletter.
Well, you can go to roota.com, and there's a whole bunch of free articles and information. If you click on the archives button at the end of each section, there's also a paid subscriber version that gets more in depth, and you have access to all. I think there's 800 articles now, so it's a good time. And I try to keep everybody up to date on how things fit into the road to Roota theory and timing and things like that. So come by, take a visit, and search around and learn about the stranger part of the gold and silver market.
Appreciate talking with you, Bix. We really do. It's always an interesting conversation. And as we've said, as you've said, as so many others have said, Alex Jones, so many people note that it's important in this day and age to use your discernment. Take a look at what everybody is saying and then use your own judgment and discernment to draw your own conclusions. And I don't think people can come to the proper conclusions without at least considering your theories and really digging into it. So people can do that at roadtoroota.com. Oh, and Happy New Year, Bix. Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Hey, you too, Sean, and I really enjoy, logging into your site and listening to the next guy chime in about what's going on in the crazy world we live in.
I appreciate that, and I want to let everybody know, too, that, yes, I've been doing a ton of interviews lately, and I've really slowed down on the silver updates and things like that, and I want to get back to that. I miss doing those. There's so much to talk about. Sometimes it's so hard to keep up, Bix, and you know this, that having a conversation with a like-minded person gives you the opportunity to cover more ground, and that's why I value time together with people like you and Andy Hoffman and Bob Chapman and James Turk and all the others. So we wish you a Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you again sometime in 2012.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thanks for tuning in, and visit SGTReport for all the latest on a daily basis. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Hey guys, SGT here. Kind of an emergency update. Was wanting to talk with BIX WEIR yesterday. We connected briefly and decided let's talk today, and now the markets have calmed down just a bit. Basically, BIX is saying everything is happening according to plan. BIX, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really busy these days watching all the action.
Yeah, it's crazy. I put out a little note today at SGTReport saying, did the elite send a signal yesterday that a market bottom had been reached? Because the S&P 500 finished down yesterday 6.66%. And BIX, you know how those elite love to use their secret coded numerology.
I do, but I don't think they've signaled that we've hit a bottom. I think what's going on right now with the Dow is that the Fed is meeting today. They're supposed to release something at 11:15, and I think what they're going to do is make a gigantic mistake. And then in the days following, you're going to see another continuation of this crash, so that they put the focus on the Fed managing the monetary system and making mistakes as they do it.
Bix, let's talk about your e-blast this week. The Dow has tanked, a couple thousand points in short order, and one of your more recent notes says, now the end game kicks into high gear. This is a new reality. You really truly believe that everything's going according to plan, huh?
Yes, I do, and things will transpire over the next, from now to the end of the year. We're going to see a continual decrease, an increase in the velocity of that decrease, and we're going to see the main battles right now for the bad guys are in the silver markets, and they are doing absolutely everything they can to project to the world that silver is not the place to be, silver is not a monetary metal, and silver is not a safe haven. Now, of course, we know different. We know that that's complete bullshit, and the battles that are going on, it's kind of like if you ever watch Star Trek, and just when they're going to get blasted out of space, they say, transfer all power to the forward shields. That's what's going on right now. The banks are trying their best to protect silver, and not gold, although they're both run off computer programs. Silver is the metal that can destroy the entire monetary system. Taking out J.P. Morgan would start a crash in the derivatives market that is unrecoverable. And that's where all their power is going. Protect the silver market so that people don't rush in and buy physical silver.
Yeah, those of us who understand this silver story know that we're right. We know that we're in the right. We know that we're on the right side of the trade if we're long, especially if we have physical metal. And, frankly, as disappointing as the recent near-term silver performance has been, relative to the dumping and the absolute annihilation of the stock market and stocks, silver has really helped retain purchasing power. It's actually helped us retain our wealth. It hasn't crashed, and that's the bright side. But it does feel like silver should have gone up $4, $5, $6, $7 over the past week if it was going to track gold. What is your perception of where we're headed still over the next 6 months? Because it seems to me as long as these guys have the ability to crush silver with endless paper, we're never going to get past 50.
You're right, except there's a few things to think about. Remember back when silver went from $25 in January to $50 by May 1st. That was Bill Daley, who is Obama's chief of staff now. He was in charge of the silver rigging at J.P. Morgan. Now he's sitting right next to the president. He allowed it to go up to 50. He slammed it down. It's still on a computer program. The key is that where would we be today if we started all this trouble at $50 before they slammed it? Would we, if you run the scenario, they've been slamming it ever since May 1st, silver should be $200, $300 today if it was allowed to trade freely from May 1st on. So you need to put everything into perspective. Yes, silver hasn't gone down that much compared to the stock market and things like that, but where should silver be if it was allowed to trade freely from, say, May 1st on? It should be $200, $300.
But that is part of the frustration. I mean, I'm just saying, sunny side is that it didn't crash, but still, it gets a little frustrating when we know that it's being manipulated to stay at these low levels. You wrote in an e-blast earlier in the week, you wrote, quote, very important. There's a serious lesson that the world must learn before we return to a gold-silver standard. That lesson is that unbacked fiat money is a curse on humanity. The good guys have cleared the way for massive hyperinflation to destroy the global unbacked fiat monetary system. As a lesson, that's a brutal lesson, Bix. It's going to destroy a lot of people. The middle class, the working poor, folks that are not prepared are going to be absolutely devastated.
I know it's a brutal lesson, but in order to get full buy-in on a return to the gold standard, the lesson must be learned. People don't understand today, in the United States especially, that there is no free lunch. You cannot print wealth. It's a fallacy. We've been living in this fantasy world for so long. People have to learn this lesson in order for us to go forward. Otherwise, we are going to get sucked into the debt trap. We will never get free from where we are, of these bankers controlling our lives. It is a difficult lesson, but it must be learned.
Well, and ultimately, I think that the lesson needs to be learned by the people, but boy, it's time for those bankers to learn a lesson. I mean, to manipulate humanity as they've done for literally hundreds of years is just beyond the pale, and I think there's a lot of us that are sitting in, in my shoes, people that feel the way I do, want to see these people pay, because they've gotten away literally with murder for so long, BIX. You conclude on this email blast, you write, quote, "Watch for the banksters to implode over the next few months." We're seeing some of that happen with the action in Citigroup stock, Bank of America stock. Is this truly getting to be sort of the 11th hour for these guys?
It is, and there will be retribution. There will be investigations into all of this once the truth comes out. Now, part of that is going to be the announcement by the CFTC that there was manipulation in the silver markets by J.P. Morgan. There's a whistleblower. Everything's all lined up. They've got plenty of proof. They've been waiting for the moment, and that moment is very near. I would between now and the end of the year, that's going to happen. And just imagine what that's going to do to the understanding and the psyche behind silver. And if they do that and remove J.P. Morgan from their position of controlling the market, we will get back to a free market in silver. Who knows what that would be? Things are rapidly changing.
Okay, Bix. Well, before we let you go here, we just wanted to do a quick check-in, keep this to a one-part interview. We want people to understand that if you are in silver, you are in the right trade. If you're in gold, you've done extremely well over the past couple of weeks. But ultimately, if you look at the long-term charts, silver has still outperformed gold in the 10-year, the 5-year, the 3-year, the 1-year chart. You had a subscriber ask you recently, why hasn't silver taken off? It went up to 42, and now it's down to 38. I'm sure this is on your readers' minds. Please comment. And I think you just did, but let's just sum up here, because I want people to realize that what you're talking about is basically that the end is going to come like a thief in the night. This thing could snap to 100 or 200 in very short order once this system finally breaks once and for all. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. And when it will come, I'm putting together a timeline right now. Hopefully it'll be out this week. And it kind of breaks down what my timeline is over the next. All of this should transpire over the next 3 or 4 months, and things are going to change rapidly. Just sit tight, wait it out. If you have physical silver already, hold on to it. If you don't have it yet, there's still people selling it, so get out there and get as much as you can to prepare for what's coming.
As Jim Sinclair has always said, it takes a real patient trader, and there's precious few of them, to be right and sit tight. So I guess that's what we're saying, folks. Be right, now sit tight. So, Bix, last question. I'd be remiss not to ask you about what's going on in the Eurozone. We are seeing more cracks in the armor of this Eurozone story than we're seeing even maybe in the United States. What do you foresee for the euro currency and then the dollar?
If you listen to Lindsey Williams, the euro is going to go before the dollar, and it'll be about a week that it takes from the crash of the euro to the crash of the dollar. I'm on that page, but it's all fiat currencies are blowing up now. The entire unbacked monetary system is unsustainable, and we're going to learn that lesson very, very painfully over the next few months.
Okay, and parting words of wisdom, any last thoughts?
I would say, remember when you buy physical gold and physical silver, that's money that you have in your safe deposit. Well, hopefully not in your safe deposit box. In your safe, that is money. You can't look at it as an investment. Look at it as money, as your future wealth, and your future checking account is held in those physical coins.
Okay, Bix. Well, we know you've got a subscription-based service, but you also have a lot of good free information over on your website. How do people find you?
just come over on roadtoroota.com, roadtoroota.com, and sign up for a free email blast and take a look at all the interesting stuff that's there.
Okay. Hey, Bix, thanks for the quick update, and we'll check in again as action in the market warrants. Certainly within a month we'll check in, but maybe sooner. Thanks a lot, Bix.
Thanks, Sean.
Guys, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for all your support. Good night.
Hello, and welcome to another TMRN, Time Monk Radio Network production. I'm McLaren, your host for this program. Today is Saturday, December 10, 2011, and rejoining us today is BIX WEIR. BIX runs the roadtoroota.com website and offers his insights regarding movements and price changes of gold and silver to his subscribers. The premise behind the Road to Roota theory is that there are good guys and bad guys in the monetary and financial world operating behind the scenes. The good guys are acting to return the USA and potentially thereby the world to a basis of sound money, enabling the potential for prosperity to be achieved by those that work for it, while the bad guys are, and have been, taking advantage of the current corrupt monetary and financial system to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else. Hello, Bix, and welcome to the Time Monk Radio Roundtable.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about today's interview.
Terrific. We're very happy to have you back again. The Time Monk Radio Network administrator and executive producer is Fox. Today's program producer director and technical support for this show are being coordinated by TRM and member Gemini 1111. Several members of the forum were kind enough to join us for this discussion. They include members Alan, Romans 8:28 is true, also known as Romans, and Nad. For listeners to this interview, we are assuming you have a fairly good understanding of Bix's work, the Road to Roota theory, and the premises that underlie his thinking. Again, his website is roadtoroota.com. This interview will be available on YouTube for free at the Time Monk Radio channel and at the website webbotforum.com. Are you ready to begin, Bix?
Let's go.
Terrific. Today's roundtable discussion questions have been broken into a number of different topic areas, the first of which is market events. And the first question on this topic area is presented by Romans. Romans?
Hi, Bix. It's a pleasure to talk with you again. I have a combination question here that was both on my mind and another forum member, Blank and B. And the question is, what future fallout do you anticipate related to MF Global situation, and also, in your opinion, what do you believe the ramifications of the whole fiasco will have on the silver market?
That's a big question, and it's the hot topic right now as far as the behind-the-scenes battle for basically a return to a gold and silver standard. What happened at MF Global? The first thing you need to understand, it's MF Global is one of, if not the largest brokerage for commodities, mainly dealing in on the COMEX, but also at the LME in London. And for a U.S. or any unbacked currency to survive, you have to control all commodities, and that's been true over the centuries, because the moment you remove a backing from a currency, for example, the U.S., when the U.S. went off the pseudo gold standard we have in 71, the moment you move off that, people are going to flock into commodities. So what my theory is, and what I've shown and proven, I believe, is that in the early 1970s,
the Federal Reserve, along with Alan Greenspan and a guy named John Kimony, introduced computer trading programs to rig the commodity markets. And that was solely in order to control the unbacked fiat monetary system and have it last as long as it's lasted. So having the largest commodity brokerage firm go down in a pile almost instantaneously is a gigantic deal on every level. Now, the MF Global situation is interesting because of the connections of John Corzine, because of how they went down. They went down not because of their European bets went bad. That's the story that's given to the public. The Fed and the Treasury and the banks could have covered that up easily. It's not about $2 or $3 billion. It's much bigger. And what it's doing is, first of all, it's JP Morgan is the bank that took them down. They pulled their credit line. They slowed down their trades during a couple trading days. They've basically put a lien on, or tried to put a lien on all their assets and all their customer assets. This is solely a JP Morgan instigated event. Now, the question comes down to, was JP Morgan doing this for their own benefit to cover their shorts, or what was JP Morgan's motivation? Or, as I've come to discover a little while down the line, now that we're this far down, were they told and directed to do it by the good guys, by the people at the U.S. Treasury and the people at the Fed in the U.S., I believe directed them to take down MF Global. You can tell by all the delays that are happening, all the regulators that are dropping the ball. This is purely an event to destabilize the market. And I made a list of 6 things that are basically the end result of this MF Global collapse. And the first one is you're going to have even more regulations in the market, which is not what the bankers want. 2, you're going to have a loss of trust in the CME and at other exchanges and in London. 3, you're going to have people moving out of silver contracts and gold contracts and into physical. We're already seeing that. As a matter of fact, my own coin dealer in the area had $60,000 tied up with MF Global. He's gotten some of it back, but not even close to all of it. And he said there's no way he's going back into hedge his inventories in futures and options. He's going to use all that money and stick it into inventory. So it's just more examples of people taking money out of the paper games and moving it into the real stuff, the real physical gold and real physical silver. And then 4 is a loss of trust in the legal and bankruptcy system. This bankruptcy proceeding is an absolute joke and being run by people, the trustee and the bankruptcy court and JP Morgan have full control, and the 150,000 accounts that are frozen at MF Global have no say in the whole matter. It is all being done the way they want to be done, and it is delaying any kind of refund, or the biggest thing is delaying getting contracts back that people were supposedly bought on the long side, and then they're giving them back. In the case of Gerald Salente, he had, I think, gold contracts in the $1,400 range for December delivery, and they're transferring it to another brokerage house at today's market price of 17 something. So all that fraud is going on. There's a loss of trust in all the guarantees. The CME was supposed to guarantee all MF Global trades, and that's why all these exchanges are going public now. They used to be owned by the board members, by the traders themselves. They're all going public because they know the end game is near, and that end game is to default on everything. And then the last, there's also the SIPC, which is a private insurance for stocks and securities and things like that. They don't even have any money, much less can guarantee the trillions upon trillions of dollars in value of stocks and things they guarantee. And then the last thing is the visibility factor, the visibility of corruption at the very heart of the commodity markets. The whole world knows now, and as Bill Murphy says over at GATA, the bad guys can't stand the light of day. Once it's shown in the open what's going on, everybody's going to rush into physical, get out of all their paper contracts, which we're seeing now. And there was a very interesting announcement today or Friday that HSBC is suing MF Global for contracts that for gold contracts and silver contracts that they don't know who the owner is. There are 8 or 9 claims on it, very same gold and very same silver. So the whole MF Global ramifications are going to be gigantic, and they are gigantic already. And you're seeing people starting to panic. We're very close to that rich riots attack on the warehouses of gold and silver that Cliff Hyde talked about all these years. I think we're seeing it now, and between now and sometime within the first quarter, we're going to see basically the stopping of trade on the COMEX and everybody chasing after gold and silver bars that they thought they had in inventory. So it is a huge deal. It is being directed by the good guys, I believe, to completely destroy all trust in our financial markets, which is part of the plan. Part of the plan is to destroy all markets and return to a gold standard with a more fair playing field. So that's kind of a long answer to an easy question.
Well, that's okay. I appreciate that, and I agree with you that the light of day is sure starting to shine on this. And I don't think it's going to take as long as people think for people to catch on. You've kind of already addressed a little bit of this next question, but I'll go ahead and give it to you anyway. What event or events do you believe will bring on an end to the fraud and deception that the silver market is now showing that is so obvious? Do you think it'll be the Hong Kong Metals Exchange opening, or this MF Global thing, or something else?
The Hong Kong Metal Exchange, I think it's a non-factor because all the exchanges are in on the game. So any large exchange that opens, even in China or wherever it is going to be in on the game. The game can be ended in a blink of an eye by anyone with $5 or $6 billion, which is nothing, and that would be to take delivery of every ounce of silver that you can get your hands on. Now that it's easier said than done because they will change the rules. The COMEX will start changing the rules so that you can't pull out physical metal. All these rules will change as they get deeper and deeper in trouble. But the silver manipulation will end the same time that all market manipulation ends. And it's been going on since the early 70s. So this is a big deal when it happens. But you can't let silver trade freely and at the same time have other markets be rigged, because silver will jump to $1,000 an ounce in a blink of an eye if it is allowed to trade freely, and it will stop being available. The physical side of the market is very tight right now, and the moment you stop the manipulation, and this is partly why the CFTC isn't coming down on JP Morgan, the moment you stop it, it's game over for almost every commodity, which runs over into every form of money, including the derivative market, which is imploding as we speak.
Well, I agree. I can see your point there. Sure appreciate those answers, Bix.
No problem.
The third and final question in this section is going to be presented to you, Bix, by Alan. Alan?
Thank you. And Bix, it's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.
At present, the ECB, the European Central Bank, appears to be very insolvent on a market-to-market basis of its very underwater sovereign notes and the bond holdings. Do you have any thoughts on when the gold market might finally wake up and react to the situation?
Well, from the gold market side, the gold market is under control of the computer program. So whether or not, it tends to be the worse things get, the more they have to control gold. So it's kind of a reverse indicator. But what's going on in Europe is it's a gigantic deal. What they talk about in the news is just a tiny, tiny part of it. All these bailouts are bailouts for banks. They're not sovereign bailouts. They're bailing out the bondholders, and the bondholders are usually the banks. A very interesting thing happened a few months back when they bailed out Greece and only partially paid back the bondholders. And then the derivative, I think it's a board of derivative holders, mainly the banks, said this doesn't count as a default under the credit default swap arrangement, which was completely against every rule they have on credit default swaps.
The prices of gold and silver are massively depressed. Today, they should be 50 times what they are right now. But because they've been rigged for the last 40 years, we've been conditioned to think, oh my God, $50 silver, that's a good number. That's not the price of silver. That's not the fair market value of silver. So if they can crush it from 50 down to 10, what's the difference between that and crushing it from 500 down to 100?
Right, but let's come full circle now, because you, in a note to me, you wrote, what happens if the opposite occurs? What if gold and silver both take off to $10,000 an ounce or $100,000 an ounce, destroying all of the financial shorts and thus the entire financial system? Just think of the massive chaos in that scenario, with everybody losing everything that was not tied to a real physical asset. You write, you would then hear the cries of nationalization and confiscation from all corners of the globe, which really gets back to your mining stocks point.
Exactly. There's two extremes here that, knowing that they rig the prices with computers on a daily basis, and they have the ability to put as many paper sale orders in as they want, they also have the ability to put as many electronic buy orders in. So, they can drive the price to zero, they can drive the price to $1 million. What they try to do is manage the price so that the system continues to function. In the road to roota theory, the very end of this whole implementation of this theory is that the prices of gold and silver go through the roof. The unbacked fiat money system is destroyed because they print too much, and then we go back to a gold and silver standard. That is what I believe is going to happen. The question is, are they going to try to slam it down before this happens and then let it go crazy, or is it going to go crazy, thus causing the collapse? It's the two extremes, but either way, there's chaos.
You want to make any short-term predictions? What's your gut feeling say about silver taking out 50?
Well, you got to remember it's managed. So when it went from January $25 to March 1st, $50, and then slammed it back down, that was all managed to get people in, then to slam it to say, hey, you shouldn't be in silver. Now the whole question is going to become, when are they going to let it go? When are they going to turn off the computers that rig it every day? Now, in what I believe is we are getting really close to it, and meaning they will probably, in the next 2 or 3 months, allow the price of silver to go up over $50, and there is no resistance over $50 historically. And that was the high way back when the Hunt brothers supposedly tried to corner the market. So anything above 50, it's name your price. At that point, things are going to get a little crazy in the economy and the stock market, and that's what you got to just be able to write out. But my short-term prediction is that by the end of the year, we're going to see silver prices well over 100, and we're going to see massive chaos in the financial markets by then.
That's interesting. So you're seeing silver over 100 by the end of 2011?
By the end of 2011, and then continuing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been pegging the number around 60 to 75, except to your point, there is no overhead resistance. I mean, if it's going to get past 50, it really, there's no telling how high it could go, and especially if we break the chains of this manipulation. Yes,
but remember, it's all kind of qualified on the fact that they can put it wherever they want. So, if someone wants to quote me, oh, you said $100 by the end of the year, I believe it will be there, but it might go down to 25 before we get there. So the key is to stay out of the system, stay out of their electronic system, so that they can't take your silver investment away from you.
Yeah, and exactly. And I also want to just restate for people that this has never been a casino for me. This idea of investing in silver and gold, physical assets, has never been about, taking out a, mortgage and a home equity line of credit and throwing everything at silver and, because BIX said it's going to go to 100 by the end of the year. That is not the correct approach. The point is, BIX, is that if you dollar cost average, if the folks listening to this make the effort to buy every 2 weeks, every month, every payday, buy what you can at whatever the price is, that's probably the best way to do this thing, since none of us can predict the future. None of us have an absolute crystal ball.
That is the exact way to do it, and it's fun. It is really fun to go down to your local coin dealer every couple weeks and put some pieces of paper down and get some real physical silver in your pocket, and you go put it in your safe or dig a hole in the ground and put it in. But it's fun. It's a blast, and it's the smartest thing you could do.
Yeah, it really is a joy. Those coin shows are a lot of fun, too. So let's conclude with the good news, Bix. You write, remember, we are in the hot zone, but rest assured there is a light at the end of this very dark road.
This is the whole road to roota theory that Alan Greenspan in the 70s had developed with the Federal Reserve Boston, is that run the system as long as you can, sucking up the benefits, and when it's done, when so much money has been printed and so much infrastructure has been built, crash the system, go back to a gold and silver standard, erase all debt, and start fresh as a free and independent nation.
When we talk about a debt jubilee, I covered this in a recent interview, as we talk about a debt jubilee, Bix, what are the chances that the debt jubilee or a debt forgiveness or a resetting of the system is truly going to benefit the common man in this country? Because it seems like the system is so fixed globally that what they will do is try to just reset it for banks, and the common man will be screwed and forced into some new currency or some new system where their debt is just transferred over. Is that possible?
That's what the bad guys want to do. They want to crash the system to kind of reboot themselves because they've screwed up so badly. But this time, the people are not going to stand for it. Last time, Hank Paulson came into Congress with a gun, $700 billion, and said, you give us this money or, the whole entire infrastructure is going to blow up. It's blowing up anyway, and the debt jubilee theory, it's not going to be a declaration of, okay, all debt is gone, you can walk away from your mortgage and things like that. It is going to happen organically because of the troubles that the banks are in, because the regulators are finally going to pull the plug on the game, and the banks will cause the crash, and the banks will be taken out of their seat of power, which is, their seat of power is the ability to create money out of thin air. And it's not just the Federal Reserve. It's banks in general that practice leveraged lending. It's fractional reserve lending where for every $10 they have, they can lend out $200. That's great going up because you get 20 times your investment gain. But when you're going down, you lose 5% of that money, 5% of that Tier 1 capital, and you have destroyed your entire capital base. That's what's happening now, and you're going to see it in the third quarter results. When the banks declare how much they made for the third quarter, that's when the real panic's going to start in.
What is your take on China? Is China starting to be influenced to the degree that they're being roped into this global system and supporting some of the bailouts and some of the bond purchases happening that we're seeing in the Eurozone now? Because it seems to me, and for a lot of us, we thought, well, China, as ironic as it is as a communist nation, is essentially, in the role of the good guy here by helping to bring down this corrupt global system.
Yes, China's been involved with the entire system, the entire rigging of the markets ever since, the 70s. Wen Jiabao, the premier of China, is an expert gold bug. He was a gold geologist. Now he practically runs China. His wife is a gold expert. They know what's going on. They've known for years. They've played the game as they were instructed, and they are working with the good guys. They are ready. They can pull the plug on globalization in a blink of an eye. And, everybody says, well, China needs us as a customer. China doesn't need us. We pay them paper for the goods that they make, and we ship them over here. China has, $1.3 billion customers of their own. They don't need us at all. And when they're ready, they can pull the plug on the system. The United States can pull the plug on the system. Anybody could pull the plug now. All you have to do is be a country, print some money, and use that printed money to buy gold and silver. What would happen if a country declared that they're not only going to hold gold as a reserve, they're also going to hold silver as a reserve? You're going to see mass chaos with the shorts in silver.
But with China complicit in this thing to the degree that they are a player globally and they are sort of playing along a little bit here, can the system limp along for another 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years?
No, the United States, we're done with that. We're going to pull the plug. China plays along with us. What happened over the last 20, 30 years? We built China's infrastructure. The globalization and all the factories built in China was all part of the plan. And in the end, they own a lot of our debt. They're gonna walk away and say, you guys screwed us out of all this debt that we have by destroying your currency. We're gonna just keep all this infrastructure that you claim to own in our country. China is going along with what the good guys within the United States have planned all along. And when they're ready, which I think is by the end of the year, they're going to pull the plug on this whole thing.
It's always so entertaining and engaging to speak with you. Your views are interesting and compelling, and people love to hear your thoughts. So, first of all, before we let you go, tell us how you got into this thing, how you woke up, and how people find you on the Internet if they want to read more of your work.
10 years ago or so, I bought my first shares of Newmont Mining at about $20 a share, and it went down to 15, and I was all mad, and I wanted to know.
And I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
This hearing is adjourned.